One saying you hear a lot of today is that you cannot get to heaven by your works, and that's a true statement. Ephesians tells us that for by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. But then the next verse says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. And so you have this faith in works. And even back in Jesus' time, when you take James, he would say, well, I have faith. You have faith. I have works. Show me your faith without your works. I'll show you my faith by my works. And, don't you know that faith without works is dead? Well, even Paul said, hey, you're to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Now, they're not saying that you can work your way into heaven. But what they're saying is that we are to be obedient. If you truly have faith, well, then there should be works with it. And so, we're to work out our salvation as doing a work which God has provided for us with fear and trembling. See, when you get to heaven, well, to get into heaven, well, it's not a democracy. It's not some kind of a legal contract that you can sign, or if you do A, B, and C. You get into heaven by the King. It's a kingdom. And unless the King, specifically the King of Kings, Jesus Christ, says that you get in, then you're not getting in. It is by his discretion. And he looks at the heart. And what you get into here is when he looks at our lives and he looks at our works or lack thereof, well, he's seen the heart. And so the question I have for you today is this. We know that you cannot get into heaven by your works, but can your works or lack thereof keep you from getting into heaven? Now that's an interesting question. I want you to think about two people. And one was the rich young man that came to Jesus and said, good master, what must I do to get into heaven? And Jesus says, well, keep all the commandments. And he says, those I've done from my youth. And he says, well, go and sell all that you have and give to the poor. And then you'll have riches in heaven, and then come follow me. Well, that made the young man very sorrowful, and he walked away. See, now, Jesus asked him to do a work. Not because the work was going to save him, but he wanted to see, do you love me more than you love your money? And he didn't. Now, I want you to think about Cornelius, a centurion. Now, here's a man. He was a devout man. He feared God with all his house, gave much alms to the poor, and he prayed always. And in a vision, God sent an angel to him to tell him that, hey, your prayers and your alms have come up before God as a memorial. Now, that's something. And then he tells him to send for Peter, and Peter will tell him what he needs to do. And so, by his works, well, his works didn't save him, but it shows a heart that loved God and that feared God. And God had compassion and mercy. He found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Well, for you and I, well, our works says something to God. And our works have something to say on whether the king says, hey, you're mine or you're not mine. And so these are things I want you to think on. And so I think today we need to quit hating on works. Now, it's one thing to say, hey, you can't work your way into heaven, but hey, you need to be working. Hey, we should be all about good works. And just think about your life and how much different it would be if you put a lot of efforts into good works. Man, we need good works today. Just something to think about.